I'm a parent of an active shooter. When I say an active shooter, of a gentleman who's currently incarcerated for shooting at people. Imagine that. We're not in the Wild Wild West. I didn't teach him that. I'm not okay with that. But I have to speak to that. Because that's who I am. And what I drew from that situation are the effects of incarceration on the community, on families, and on women especially. How it affects us, how it affects our children, how it affects how we live, and how we encounter each other. We are fragmented as a community, as communities of color, because of that institution of incarceration. There is nobody who's going to have our conversation the way we have it until we have it ourselves. Because nobody's going to speak to it with the passion that we speak to it, with the urgency that we speak to it, because it's affecting us directly. When you see mothers affected, as the gentleman spoke about his mother, the dad wasn't there for whatever reason, and she had to grind, that's the plight. That's a systemic thing that they're doing, that they, the powers that be, do in communities of color. First they incarcerate the men, and then they work the women. They work them to the point where they can't even look up to say, I can go to this school, because they got to grind. They got to pay the rent, they got to get the food. So now the children, which were, in my time, latchkey kids, are now not even latchkey. They're just out there. And Miss Betty, who used to be looking, has to keep her mouth shut because the kids got her shook. But we got to get to the place where we are all right with co-parenting and people speaking to our children. Because what we don't speak to, NYPD will. The Department of Corrections will. They will beat your child, they will stomp your child, they will take your child and take you through scenarios that you could not imagine. But you gotta hold on to that. And you gotta flip that narrative. And you have to let these communities know that we have to actively engage with each other. I don't even care where they're from. Everybody here, everything began, and that's why I wore this shirt, in Africa. I don't want to hear about Latino. I don't want to hear about Haitian. I don't want to hear about Dominican. I don't want to hear about Trinidadian. Everything derived from Africa. Africa is the beginning of civilization. How do we know it? Because that's where Adam and Eve were, in Africa. And everything was taken from it and dropped off in different places, and we learned different languages. But we as a community of brown-skinned people have to interact cohesively with each other. We've got to get to that place, because that's where we're divided. And that's where they break down our numbers and make us think that we're less impactful. We have to get our numbers together, because what affects you ultimately affects me. And what other Americans don't realize is what affects them will ultimately affect us, and vice versa. So now how do we deal with that plight? We coexist. We start loving one another, we start helping one another. You put the hatchet down, right? Because you got a better understanding.
Sure.
Get understanding today. You put the hatchet down because you have to exist. You have to exist. It's a mandate that you exist. You stayed alive this long to do that, to exist at another level. Hopefully at a better level. A level that's productive and it can give you the lifestyle that you want without being, say, without jeopardizing your freedom. Let's use that.
So she just got to finish talking about politics. All right. So I got a couple of challenges. So now the difference between our game and their game is two things: politics and paper. Real paper, not this nickel and dime bag paper on the street. Paper to do with this, what you said in the South Bronx. She mentioned Congresswoman, actually, Maxine Waters. Here's what she said about Crips and the Bloods. Sorry, is somebody here represent him? Maxine Waters defends Crips, Bloods, and the Hood as having more integrity than Trump. Yeah. This is for real.
Yeah, right.
I forgot. You left out Young Disciples and the Yahweh Saints.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay, I wasn't in the gangs. I was telling, who was I telling? Your son. I was telling your son, I was in the gangs. They always gave me a pass. I lived on Stebbins Avenue, 163rd Street. I know about 133. And so I was just blessed like that to get a pass from everybody, 160, 7th Street and all that kind of stuff. My uncle did 25. He did 25. When he came out, he said, I don't want you to go in there. I know it's about anything that you need done in the street, I will do it. If you need somebody to cop for you, you need some of this, I will do it. So I was kind of like blessed in it. He taught me, he was a little guy like me, he taught me how to, get along in a small area. If you got to be in a small area, you know what I mean? Who goes up and down? Be in a small area, how you protect yourself in a small area. So I was blessed in that sense, and so I learned the other side of it. Became more familiar with the other side of it. Sister writes poetry and stuff like that. We can use our pen to create. The brother like to create wealth with our idea and our pen. We got to elevate our game. Some more young, that next generation. Because we got to educate them about the history, then we got to educate them about the civics. How to maneuver, how to make what Ruth is talking about happen to get the vote out. How to do petitions. We got to train them on how to do the petitions. We got to train them on, how to engage in the other community organizations to make things happen. Why they hated the Panthers so much? Because one, that's what they were doing. They were getting people of all color together against oppression. Oppression. There wasn't no black-white thing. It was against the oppressor. That's why they hated the Panthers. That's why what they had to do was to infiltrate the Panthers until the day. That's why the Bloods and the Crips and anybody else at our boys, because it started back then, they don't want us to get together. That's the deal. That's the deal. And so we gotta seize these strategies to empower our community. We know about them.
The Panthers had two great things, and that's why they tried to destroy it. It was a breakfast program and a tutorial program.
Right.
Because most of the leadership of the Panthers were college educated.
Right.
Many of them were college students. And so like their image of a gang, calling the Panthers a gang, okay, they were. And the other piece is gangs in New York City. So some may not be old enough to know the history of gangs. But in the late 50s till the middle 60s, the police department destroyed gangs, street gangs. That was the zip gun. Why? Because the street gang was a unit of organization. You could not be a gang, they didn't call them gang bangers then, but you could not be in a gang if you got high. You could not be in a gang if you were a minor. That was forbidden. You had the straight shooting stand-up cat. And you could not come into my neighborhood even if I wasn't in the gang and mess with me. Outsiders could not come to our neighborhood, and we didn't have to beat you up. You just couldn't come in our turf. So we had turf, defined turf, and that's why the police destroyed gangs, because it was a means of taking young African American, Latino, or then Puerto Rican men. That was the
They were units. And that's what they gangs were units.
The gangs were units of organization.
Let's get down I came for action. I want to,
To my elders, you see this 5 and 6 right here? This is your new generation that's coming up, and like you said, putting everything out there.
yeah.
5 and 6.
That's what I'm talking about. Go ahead. I yield the floor.